Good morning, everybody. This is Matthew James from Energy Post, and welcome to this online roundtable sponsored by PGE today. This roundtable is looking at reforms to the EU ETS, or the opportunities for reforms to the EU ETS. I'm going to explain for those of you that are new to our online discussions and roundtables how it works on with the presentations today. So at the beginning, you will hear from all of our speakers individually, and once you've heard from everybody, then there will be follow a panel discussion, and after that there will be a live Q&A session. So I know that there are many ways for you to communicate with each other as attendees and with us, but please use the Q&A tab. You'll find it somewhere on your interface. I know that everybody's interface is slightly different, but find the Q&A tab in order to place your questions or put your questions to our panelists today. By doing that, it gives all the other attendees a chance to vote on the questions that they want to see answered. It makes my life as moderator much easier because the most popular questions will float to the top in that way. When it comes to the Q&A session, if we choose your question, we will ask you to ask your question live. So please be ready to switch on your microphone when you're invited. Now, I'm pleased to say that everybody has joined us. If I could just ask our speakers for the moment just to keep on mute, that would be great. I see that everybody is here. I'm very, very pleased to be hosting today's presentation, this discussion, but I'm not alone. We have actually three hosts. Our co-host today. I'm very happy to introduce Andrej Pnotek of Renew Czech Republic. Andrej, welcome.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, and I'm also joined as co-host by Jerzy Buzek, former Prime Minister, Jerzy MEP for EPP in Poland. Good morning to you too, Jerzy.
Hello, hello, very nice to see you, all of you. Well, one person, but is now enough for me because we are moderator and main leader of our meeting. Okay.
I will do my best, but Jerzy, yes, Matty, you can take the spotlight off me now. Jerzy, perhaps I could come to you first. It's very, very nice to have you here as host today. Perhaps you could explain to our audience the importance of today's discussion, what it means to your constituents, why we're discussing it today.
Okay, thank you very much. So let us start a very important meeting. Options to reform the EU ETS, opportunities and challenges. Of course, it's always opportunity if we reform something seriously. I am very happy to be able to co-host our digital roundtable today together with my colleague from the European Parliament, Andrej Pnotek. Hello, Andrej. I'm very glad to be together with you. And I'm also welcome to all of you listening to us, 400 people, as I read here. The topic of our roundtable, extremely important and timely. In the European Parliament, we are just entering the decisive phase of work on the ETS revision. In less than 3 weeks, we will vote in my committee on industry, research and energy. The committee is responsible in front of European Parliament, European Union for the whole regulation. At the same time, a Russian war in Ukraine has re-triggered discussions on energy security, energy costs, as well as how to reconcile the accelerated phase of our, phase out of coal, for example, in district heating in some member states, with reducing EU demand for gas from Russia by 2/3 before the end of the year. Whether you like it or not, it is somehow in the center of all these deliberations. Therefore, I am not surprised that so many people would like to listen to our discussion. In order to be able to properly answer the questions, what are the best options to reform ETS, I believe it is worth reminding ourselves what is the main aim of this system. And Here I would like to quote first article of EU ETS directive. It is promote reductions of greenhouse gas emissions in a cost-effective and economically efficient manner. So cost-effective and economically efficient manner. It is with this in mind that I propose in each amendment to limit access to the EU ETS market for entrants that do not have EU ETS installations and by extension do not have compliance obligations to cover their emissions. I believe this could lead to a decrease or even an end to price speculation in the EU ETS. It would be good beginning. It would be good beginning for better and working properly into EU ETS system. So I'm listening carefully to everything what you are talking about the issue, because for me it's of crucial importance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerzy. And Matti, if could I ask you to bring up the slides before I bring in Andrzej? Jerzy Buzek, thank you very much for those opening remarks and to making it, just giving us a nice introduction to today's topic. I'm just about to bring in Andrzej Knotek, but just to, I now can see a lot of people have joined since I made the announcement at the beginning. We will be operating a live Q&A. Those of you who want to ask questions, please put your questions straight into the Q&A tab. You'll find it on your Zoom interface. When you put them in there, it gives other attendees a chance to vote on the questions, and through an upvoting system, we see the most popular questions come to the top. We will come to those first when we come to the Q&A section. And I will ask you to ask your questions live if we choose your questions. So please be ready to switch on your microphone. And now, Andrzej Knotek, MEP for Renew Czech Republic. Andrzej, you've heard from Jerzy. You're also co-host today. Why is this such an important issue?
Thank you very much, James. Thank you very much, Jerzy. Also, thanks to PGE and Energy Post for hosting as it has been said, timely event, very timely event today. And very welcome to all online on this event. It is very natural that with the more ambitious 2030 goals, also the ETS as a successful decarbonization tool is considered and addressed in the revised legislation. On the other side, and it has been partially touched by Jerzy, we are in a situation of economic and social tension at the same time because of the pandemics, because of the global situation, because of the war. And we have inflation of interest rates, of energy prices, and also of the basic commodities like groceries. So a revision of such a tool with such impact like ETS must be done smartly and also sustainably, in a sustainable way, considering all possible sustainabilities, including the social one. When we go to the proposal of the Commission, in general, it goes in a good direction. But I would have some specific recommendations, maybe also coming from Czech Republic, energy-intensive country with energy-intensive industry. So when we look on the proposal, the extension is fine, I would say, for maritime and aviation sector in gradual way. I see some potential risks with the road transport and buildings because of the reasons I have said in the beginning. Even though that we plan a social climate fund to, let's say, reduce some social impacts, there could be issue. Second aspect is the competitiveness. It's linked with the CBAM, with the carbon border adjustment mechanism. There are those calling for its fast implementation and therefore fast phase out of free allowances. In my eyes, we must be very careful to start fostering the phase out of free allowances, because if the CBAM didn't work, we would have real issues with the carbon leakage and at the end, economic competitiveness and also ecology, climate impact. Special care we must give to exporters, exporters, EU exporters to countries, to third countries without any ETS or some carbon pricing system. They need some rebate or also free allowances to be competitive on the market. Third aspect is the predictability of the price. According to some plans, today's price should have been somewhere around 30 euro per allowance, but we have reached already 100 in a peak. So this is something which causes issues to the businesses, and the revision should have very effective and operable measures to react effectively if the price is either too low or too high. My preferred solution would be to have a corridor with minimal maximal price. The corridor could be growing, of course, in time, but would be a good solution. If not a corridor, then at least to have some effective working with the market stability reserve to reduce the allowances on the market according to price. And last but not least, and very important, and this is also linked with the study that will be presented, and this is the limitations of the trading. The ETS market is not a typical financial market, and I'm by heart convinced that only businesses and sectors that by natural logics are using the allowances because they are energy intensive, and so such businesses should be in, and not financial institutions, no more speculations. This is not a good future for ETS. And the very last comment, and this is also a politically sensitive one, especially in today's time, modernization fund and its eligibility. I belong to those MEPs that believe that the new global situation coming from the war on Ukraine even underlines the need to support also gas investments in the modernization fund, because of the need to diversify the supplies to Europe and to have our grid interoperable to get the gas from one region to the another. Other aspect would be even further going, and this is touching some aspects of nuclear energy in a sustainable way, but I would have to talk longer. So thank you very much for hosting this event. It is a timely event, and I'm very looking forward for fruitful and professional debate. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andre. Yes, not just you looking forward to the discussion. We've now got over 200 people online, which is no surprise with such a hot topic. Matti, if I could ask you to just bring up the program slide, please. Thank you. So we've just heard from our co-hosts, MEP Jerzy Buzek, MEP Andrzej Knotek. We are about to see a presentation by Fabien Roch from FTI Compass Lexicon. He's going to present a summary of a brand new report. It's not even published yet, so you're the first people to see it. Once we've heard the presentation, we'll then be able to get reactions from all of our panelists, a mixture of stakeholders and consultants. Wanda Buck, Vice President of Regulatory Affairs at PGE, Robert Jeschke, Director at the National Center for Emissions Management, Kubica, and also the Center for Energy and the CAKE, the organization. Andre Marcoux is also with us, founder and executive director at the European Roundtable on Climate Change and Sustainable Transition. We also have Michael Parler from the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, and Liv Rata. Liv is director at Norsk Hydro. Thank you, Matti. If we could now stop sharing, and I would like to introduce Fabien Roch, or Fabien Roch. Fabien, welcome to Energy Post. Fabien is an executive vice president with the economics consultancy Compass Lexicon, and an associate professor in economics at the University of Paris Dauphine, and with the European University Institute. His expertise spans energy and carbon dioxide markets, with a specific focus on contractual, financial and regulatory issues. Fabien Roch, welcome to Energy Post.
Well, thank you, Matt, for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. And thank you very much for the opportunity to present this study, which we are finalizing at the moment. I've been working on it with my colleagues, Guillaume Duquesne and Florian Boursier. The study has been kindly sponsored by PGE. I'm going to present the key highlights of the study today. So if we start perhaps sharing the slides, I'll go to the next slide immediately and set the scene for the discussion showing the evolution of the price of carbon allowances in the European carbon markets in the past decade. So you see here 10 years of carbon trading summarized with a long period during which the carbon price was trading below 10 euros. Then we had an increase in 2018 with the reform for phase 4 of the ETS. We had a period during 2019 with ETS prices navigating between 20 and 30 euros. You see that during the COVID-19 lockdown period, we had a small period during which we had a downside on the price, downside effect. And what's relevant, I think, for the discussion today is the trend in the past couple of years. The trend upwards, which we will discuss in a minute, is driven by a number of factors, including a change in some of the underlying market fundamentals, but also, and probably it's worth discussing, growing role of speculation and financial players in the market. So, what is this study about? Well, the study is considering some of these recent developments in the European carbon prices and volatility, and trying to understand what are the underlying drivers, both market fundamentals, but also, as I said, the growing activity of financial players, and trying to identify as well policy responses, so a set of measures which could be addressing these different issues. So that's what the study is about. And perhaps let's move to the next slide to say a little bit more about the issue. So first, you see on the chart, the standard deviation, the 5-day standard deviation of prices in the ETS. What you observe is that not only have prices gone up, but the volatility of prices has increased substantially in the past couple of years. Now, what is driving this increase and volatility and level of prices is, well, a number of things. Clearly, first, the expectation of a stronger decarbonization and the associated negotiations on the Fit for 55 package in Europe is clearly part of the picture. But also the economic rebound that we have seen post-COVID, as well as the very substantial increase in gas and coal prices. That clearly all played a role. But on top of that, I think it's important to consider some of the events that also are happening on the side of financial trading. Just to give you a few figures, we had about 100 active investment funds in the ETS in 2018. We have more than 300 active investment funds in 2022. We also have seen an increase in the long positions taken in the market by some of these financial players. So it's difficult to obviously at this stage have hard evidence on the causality between these two things. But what our study is doing is try to understand whether there is a reason to worry about this. And what we can say is clearly that speculation, as we all know, is quite important in any market, in the sense that it helps building liquidity. It helps in also matchmaking the different positions of the players. But speculation can also be negative in the sense that speculation can amplify some of the underlying uncertainty. And therefore, one needs to be very careful about how one, I would say, regulates and supervises the role of financial player in a market like the ETS. An example of a total overreaction of the market is what happened recently with the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, when we saw a more than 20 euro per ton of CO2 drop within a few days, which really illustrates the role that short-term speculation is starting to have on the ETS market. Now, as I said, one needs to understand why speculation needs to be investigated with special care in the context of the ETS, because the ETS is a different market compared to a lot of other commodity markets. We should never forget that the ETS is a market that is very much driven by policy making. Clearly, the supply, the cap of the ETS is fixed by a set of policy regulations. And to some extent, this supply is not elastic. It doesn't respond immediately to prices, and that can amplify price volatility. Now, on top of that, the fact that this market is driven by policy decision can lead to policy and regulatory uncertainty, which at the moment, quite clearly, as we are going through a lot of turbulences, let's say, in the background, gives a good ground for speculation to thrive, of course. And finally, we have a mechanism, the MSR, in the ETS, to provide some long-term, I would say, stability. But that mechanism itself, if you look at the design of it, could, in our view, be a source of destabilization of the market. Now, why is all of that important? Well, all of that is important because what is at stake is not just the ETS functioning. I think that was quite clear in the introductory statements. The ETS is actually a very important tool for the decarbonization of the European economy, and therefore having a predictable carbon price signal is very important to minimize the cost of the transition. So let's move on to the next slide and talk a little bit more about what are the measures that we identified. And I apologize, something must have gone wrong with the formatting of the slides. But we identify different measures for reform of the ETS in our study. We first stress the need for reform. We think that the current period has made it clear that what has been discussed for more than 10 years, meaning some of the underlying issues of the ETS, really need to be tackled now, because the current period with the underlying uncertainty has really amplified the impact of that uncertainty on the volatility of prices. Reform of the ETS is also needed now more than in the past, because we are about to enter into a next phase of decarbonization in Europe with electrification of a number of sectors. So having clarity on the carbon price signal and predictability is going to be essential for a number of these industrial sectors. Now, what are the measures that we put forward in the study? There are different types of measures. First, it's obvious, but I think it's important. We need better monitoring and market oversight. There's been a study conducted by the regulator ESMA, and the regulator itself concludes that improvements are necessary in terms of both the kind of data that are gathered and the analysis of this data in order to improve the surveillance of the ETS market. So this is a low regret, I would say, measure. Secondly, one could investigate the implementation of measures to regulate financial trading. Now, as I said, what is needed is to carefully assess the pros and cons, because on the one hand side, there are positive effects of financial players. On the negative side, there are also potentially, as we have discussed, destabilizing effects on the ETS and an amplification of some of the underlying trends. What are the kind of policies that could be considered here? Some have already been mentioned by the previous speakers, but clearly what could envisage to have taxes on some transactions. One could envisage to have a minimum holding period to make sure that there is not too much short-term speculation. One could also envisage limits on financial positions held by some participants. So these are the kinds of measures that could be investigated. More fundamentally, I think the time has come to look also at the underlying structural sources of uncertainty in the ETS and to resolve some of the long-term policy uncertainty. What do I mean by that? Well, clearly at the moment, we lack, and all market participants lack, I think, a clear vision as to what is going to be the EU decarbonization long-term and medium-term pathway. There are lots of discussion on the Fit for 55 pathway. There are lots of discussion on the back of the current war as to what energy independence implies for the deployment of clean technologies and decarbonization. All of that creates uncertainty for market participants and is, in a way, what is the underlying cause of speculation. So how can this be addressed? Well, clearly, this is what we highlight. We need measures for price stabilization. And these measures can be implemented in different ways. One can think of reforming the MSR, because the MSR, and we have published extensively in the past on this issue, is a price stabilization approach, whilst one could consider different approaches to reform the MSR and make it much more efficient and predictable in the way in which it will stabilize the market going forward. The revision of Article 29A has been mentioned, but I think it participates in the same kind of reasoning where one would try to find structural ways to address, I would say, the potential for price derailing for some of the anticipated range, if you want. And I think all of that should be done in a way where we are a little bit careful of the side effects, meaning that a lot of these measures can also have unintended consequences, and this is why careful implementation is needed. Finally, and I will conclude with this last thought, there could be also measures which would be targeted at also compensating some of the obliged entities, because in a way, when there is a lot of speculation and a lot of volatility, the increase associated with this cost of trading, if you want, is affecting the obliged entities. And what has been done in other markets is, if that cost is just to be excessive, to use, for instance, some of the proceeds of a tax introduced on some players to redistribute and reduce the burden on some of the obliged entities. So I will stop here, but as a conclusion, I think it will not just be one measure. It will likely be a combination of measures addressing these issues, both short-term and long-term structural measures. So with that, thank you very much for your attention.
Fabian, thanks very much. A lot of food for thought there, and I can see that the questions are coming in from our audience members, which is great. Please keep them coming. We're now with, yes, approaching 225 attendees. I'm sure there will be more questions to come. But at this point, I would like to now introduce Wanda Buck. Wanda is Head of Regulatory Affairs at PGE Polska, PGE Poland. PGE is today's sponsor and the largest of Poland's electricity companies, delivering power to around 80% of Polish homes. Wanda, I'm delighted to welcome you back to Energy Post. PGE is a power utility business based primarily on coal at this moment, but perhaps very relevant to the role of the EU ETS. You could give us some idea of how the PGE portfolio might look as we approach the horizons of 2030 and 2050. Wanda.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Matthew, for this question. Good morning, everyone. As you said, PGE is the biggest Polish energy group, and we were actually the first one that committed to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. But you know, the first checkpoint from our perspective is the year 2030. Because until 2030, we want to achieve 2.5 gigawatts in offshore wind farms, 3 gigawatts in photovoltaics, and at least 1 gigawatt in onshore. So we are also in a full swing when it comes to decarbonizing district heating sector. But you know, I think that's the moment when I can also provide you with some numbers. All of this investment that I mentioned till 2030 gonna consume more or less 19 billion euros. And at the same time, we will be obliged to buy and surrender emission allowances. You know, only in 2021, we paid 2 billion euros, which means that we spent 10% of our total investment needs for compliance with EU ETS. You know, these funds should be used to replace existing infrastructure in the first place and also to help us to decarbonize. So, you know, you can see with these numbers that actually it's questionable whether right now EU ETS is helpful for companies like PGE to decarbonize. You know, we are one of the biggest entities operating on EU carbon market, responsible for 5% of the total demand of newly issued EU ETS allowances every year. And you know, that means that excessive carbon prices and high price volatility observed recently are directly affecting our ability to finance and in the wake of that carry out our green transition.
Thank you, Wanda. So I wanted to get your reaction to what you've just heard from Fabian, the issues that he's highlighted there, and the effect that has on PGE in terms of meeting your planned strategy, your planned sort of diversification and decarbonization. You've already touched upon it, but perhaps, yes, I could get now specifically your reactions to the summary of the report.
Yes, I would like also to mix it with the final ISMA report that also was included, that the results were also included in the Compass report. You know, we thoroughly analyzed the final results of the report, and basically it shares our key concerns over the EU ETS, and by that I mean market monitoring and possible negative impact of certain trading activities. Both of reports shows especially that non-compliant participants, I mean investment funds and other financial institutions who are applying this buy and hold strategies, may lead to reduction of supply of allowances available to compliance entities. And this is because of the fact that nearly 2/3 of total number of allowances in the circulation is held by this institution with the clear intention to be to monetize only when profitable. And you know, we perceive it as a structural problem responsible for price shock on EU ETS market. And you know, many of these financial actors active on the EU carbon market are located in such distant location as a Cayman Islands. So I believe that for every one of us, it's clear that they don't have any direct interest nor impact on the emission reduction in Europe. And I also agree that the most of the compliance entities like PGEs are buying the well, maybe not put it in other words, you know, basically, companies like PGE are some kind of a victim, victim of this whole system, but also we are somehow supporting this because we are buying allowances on the secondary market with a long future position. So, you know, you can see the inconsistency. You may say that this kind of inconsistency when it comes to our approach, but we are actually forced by the situation to do it. And that's why we also welcome the proposal to further consider measures like limiting position on derivatives for CO2 emission allowances. You know, and last thing from our perspective, the conclusion that the monitoring of EU carbon markets should be improved is a step in the right direction, but you know, to prevent the excessive rise of the carbon prices and allow companies like PGE to make green investments, we need to act now, because otherwise we will face the capacity shortage and black sale in Europe. So, you know, this is the moment. This is the moment to act, and I'm calling for that.
Wanda, thank you very much. Some very, very strong words there, indeed, strong opinions there from PGE. I would now like to bring in sort of one at a time the other panelists that we have today at the round table, beginning with Liv Rata. Liv, welcome to Energy Post. I wanted to ask you to comment specifically, or come now to the Market Stability Reserve, the MSR, and perhaps also brief comments on the Article 29A as well. You've a couple of minutes, Liv, and then I would like to bring in the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, for inviting me to speak here today. Before commenting on the MSR Article 29, I see I'm the only industry company in the panelists today, so I think I'm sort of defending the industry's interest today. So it's a huge task to take. But
Liv, let me apologise. I didn't introduce you clearly. Yes, Liv is director at Norsk Hydro, the largest aluminium producer in Europe. So if I've made the introduction, you wouldn't have had to make the point. But yes, absolutely, you're one of the only industry representatives here, which is why your points are so interesting.
Yeah, and that's why I also want to talk a little bit about industries and the challenge industries are facing now before being concrete with regards to MSR and Article 29, because industries, European industries, are really going to a critical period now in the 20s. We know that we need to decarbonize. We know that we need to set plans for deliver also our part of this transition. And delivering means we need to find technologies, we need to test them, we gradually implement them. But when will we see the result? We will not see the result before after the 20s. In 2030, reduction will be coming. So meanwhile, we're having this very ambitious ETS, which is cutting its cap much faster and much more than all other regions in the world, and that's a challenge. At the same time, production in Europe is decreasing, and we are importing products with a much higher carbon footprint. We'll give an example from my industry with regards to an aluminium bar imported into Europe. The average carbon footprint of an aluminium bar is 16.7 ton per ton, whereas if it is produced in Europe, it's 6.7. Why should we import? Why shouldn't we produce more here? And we are then having this cap reduction, whereas no other countries have such a cap reduction to the 30s. And we are a large deficit now with regards to allowances, and that is also with regards to a room for speculation, because this is, as you have been saying, Fabian, it is an other market system driven by politicians. It's very volatile, and maybe the most volatile market in the world. And one could question, why is it so volatile? Because it's so it's political driven. That is also one issue one should maybe look at. So competitiveness is declining of European industries, and we are facing a CO2 price that is 3 to 4 times higher than the second most ambitious ETS in the world, the Western Climate Initiative. And we are in a situation where we actually want to have green growth in Europe, but we are declining our production. And how shall we do this transformation if we don't have industries producing and developing in a low carbon pathway to stimulate and avoid this negative socio-economic effect of this going forward? Many are talking about we need to have a high CO2 price to do this transformation. That's wrong, because a too high CO2 price do one thing to the companies. It makes them have a high operational cost in the 20s, in the period where the company needs to have the money to be able to transform. So the cap is actually a good enough signal for companies that you need to do something. And to say also, my company Norsk Hydro just also published in December our roadmap for how to reach net zero by 2050. So with regards to prices and the MSR, we must remember that the MSR was agreed upon when the prices were around €8. And it was going to tackle a sort of the historical supply demand imbalance, which was there. Fair enough, it was a huge oversupply. And a lot of that oversupply was due to also bringing in credits into the European market. But it was very much unbalanced in this structure, because it's taking out a lot, but it doesn't bring in a lot. It only brings in 400 million. And that is not a balanced instrument regards the market is getting tighter and tighter. In addition to that, is it going to invalidate allowances in the MSR? And ICES has predicted that by the year 2025, 3.1 gigaton is going to be invalidated. That is similar to 2 years annual cap in the EU ETS. We think it's needed to look at the volume in the MSR and differentiate between them, because part of the volume in the MSR are good volume. They are brought there due to reduction. And the reduction has occurred already in the balance. So why do you withdraw it and take a double correction with regards to the market going forward? And then by saying that, I think then this could be combined with Article 29, because Article 29, it's not good in the structure. It's also a lack with regards to then the governance system, with regards to when one should react and according to which principles. And it's too stringent, reflecting also that it was agreed upon in a time when the prices were very low. I think it was around above $8 there as well. And there is different variables in the MSR one should look at. That is then describing when this article should come into force. And one is then you're having a period where then you are evaluating the prices, which is set to be 6 months. Where you look at this then for those consecutive months, look at the average price, and you compare it to a period before those 6 months, which is 2 years. We think that this 6 months should be 3 months, and the 2 years should be 6 months or 2 years. And there is a requirement today that there should be a tripling with regards to prices compared to the 6 months, compared to the previous 2 years. We think that the increase in price trigger should be much lower, maybe down to 1.1. And it should be or with regards to then the period before the 3 months should be shorter, or 6 months or 2 years. And the reason why we then take this or is that this is a very volatile market. And we cannot make this price paragraph so rigid that it never can enter into force. And then we also yes.
Liv, sorry to go. Let me. I know that you will have an opportunity to bring up some of these other points later, but you've made already some excellent, very, very clear analysis and also some wants or demands there to make it work from your point of view. And I'm sure that the MEPs are listening intently. Jerzy, before I bring in Michael, I see that you have your hand up.
If I may, because the presentation by Fabian was very interesting for me. And there were some questions put in the presentation. To improve the situation and to improve predictability of EU ETS, to improve construction of ETS and the market stability reserve, what concrete should be proposed is very difficult to guess, or resolve long-term policy uncertainty, pandemic, inflation, war, and high energy prices, and so on, our changes in European Green Deal even. It's very difficult to say that we can resolve long-term policy uncertainty or structural measures to improve stabilization. Very difficult. So going to one issue, financial trading, because it was underlined, the financial trading has also contributed. So I've got a concrete question. My amendment to limit access to the EU ETS market for entities that do not have EU ETS installation and by extension do not have compliance obligations to cover their emissions, is it enough from this point of view? My question to the European Commission, and the answer, no price speculation on the market. Few months ago, no price speculation. And we see that is something not working very well from that point of view. Sorry, I had to put such a question because we are responsible as MEPs for proper regulation. So proper regulation should be our main task, main goal. So
Thank you.
Questions, very
Joe,
concrete.
that's
Sorry.
perfect. Well, this is the perfect place to put those questions with the experts that we have on hand. And we're going to come now to Michael Pahl. Michael Pahl from Potsdam Institute. Michael, if I could ask you to keep your remarks, opening remarks, as short as you can, but also perhaps you could respond to Josie's point just there. That would be perfect timing.
Yes, thanks, Matthew, for inviting me. Thanks, Fabian, for the interesting input and also for the opportunity to answer them the easiest of all questions. So I would have to make a different statement here, but I feel compelled to answer, of course. And I think it is right to be concerned about the advent of financials, and probably some of you have read the paper that we published end of last year. But I also want to make a word of caution about acting too hastily and without the necessary evidence that we need. This is also something Fabian touched upon, and I want to illustrate this in two directions. So the first one is there is still a widespread conception that by excluding financials, you would exclude speculation, but this is not right, because this is not limited to financial institutions, which is also a much too rough category. So our analysis finds that basically all actors in the ETS engage in speculation in the sense of going beyond taking the necessary risk hedging measures. So you cannot tell by looking at someone's business card what kind of trade he's engaged with in the market. So we really need to understand what's going on at the level of tradings and mechanisms. And so by just excluding financials of the market, there's a high risk you wouldn't solve the problem to the extent that it actually exists. So here again, a word of caution. Not to simplify it, but to look at really what's going on and try to get a better understanding of trading. And this is really, in that respect, it's really important to look at the ESMA report. I think there's a lot of interesting material here. The challenge is that it needs further interpretation and reanalysis. And I'm a little bit afraid that there's too much cherry picking going on here now, where everyone takes the view that it speaks to his or her own arguments, but we need a joint understanding of how a proper interpretation of the material is and what it implies of taking the measure. And to illustrate one more, and this is just a minor point, but to make it a bit more specific, Fabian presented the evolution of the volatility in the market. And this is an analysis ESMA also did. It comes to a very different conclusion. And so we have to ask ourselves, so what kind of measures are we using here and how to interpret them? And this is really essential, because if we take most of the measures that Fabian proposed, except for the transparency, which really is a no regret, but all the other measures very much depend on our understanding of the problem. Otherwise, they cannot be fully targeted and work well. So we have to take a step back, agree, or find at least a certain minimum agreement on what the problem is, and then design the measures and choose the measures accordingly. So this is the point I really want to make, and I want to caution us on looking into the solutions too quickly with too high expectations in terms of what they could achieve.
Thank you very much, Michael. We still have 2 more people to introduce. If I'd like to come now to Andre Marcoux. Andre has vast experience in managing policy-focused organizations, creating partnerships, stakeholder relations, and fundraising. His focus has been on sustainable development, climate change, and energy. Andre, you are founder and executive director at the European Roundtable on Climate Change and Sustainable Transition. Welcome to Energy Post. Hand over to you, Andre.
Thank you, and thank you. Can you hear me?
Very clear.
Yeah. Well, listen, very interesting introduction. Thank you for that. But the 3 things that are more relevant to this conversation is that I did work for Mercury Energy Trading in Geneva, and I did run Bluenext in Paris, and I did run AIDA. So I've got a bit of a trading background in many things, and I have a lot of friends in the trading community. So the important thing to look at first is the overall package that the Commission is proposed. And I think the overall package the Commission is proposed is going into the right direction. The second thing I want to highlight is Jerzy Buzek's point. Why are we doing this? Why are we using ETS? And ETS is because it provides the most efficient way to decarbonize. So that's something that we always have to keep in mind. Otherwise, we go to regulation. The question is, where is the balance between regulation and markets? And if you start continue to slap regulation as a band-aid on top of markets, at some point, the question that I'm going to have to ask you is, why do we have a market? So there's got to be that question. There's that balance, and at some point, the balance gets broken. The second thing is, what does the ETS do? The ETS does 2 things. It doesn't do anything else. It does price discovery, and it allows risk hedging. That's basically the role of the ETS. The fact that it has a declining cap, that's part of the market definition, but this is what it does. Let's be quite clear about it. Now, if you take out of this function the financial institutions, who are you going to hedge with? Because you need a counterparty to hedge with. So if you start taking them all out of this market, this is not going to work. So we need to think a little bit further, a little bit deeper about what the problem is and why do we get here. Now, what we have here, we have financial regulation. We don't want people to abuse the market. There's market abuse and there's financial instrument, there's regulation for that. But then there's the climate regulation, because we don't do this in order to have fun. We do this because we want to provide the most efficient way to decarbonization. And we need to understand the fact that the concern is not the trend. Fabian showed at the beginning the trend. The trend is not a concern. Anybody who can read and add 2 and 2 can tell you, can predict it. This is going to be the trend of the market. If you slap 55% on this, and if you slap, what do you call it, invalidation, this is an Orwellian term, invalidation. What do you just say, taken out of the market? If you do these things, what do you think is going to happen to the price? Is going to go up. The question is the speed which it goes up, and then the variability in the price in the short term. I think that's what the main concern comes from. Now, there's a couple of things that I wanted to say is that we introduced the MSR because there was a deficiency in the market design. As simple as that. There was an elasticity on the demand side. There was no elasticity on the supply side. Therefore, ego comes in the MSR. And the MSR industry included, financial institution including, regulator included, they had this obsession, rule-based market. And we're gonna, by God, we're gonna run this market based on rules, and we're gonna have automatic triggers. And if somebody forgot about the marginal line, you cannot predict everything that's gonna happen. That's not going to happen. And this is a market, especially in a regulatory market. So first you have an economic recession, then you have a financial crisis, then you have a war in Ukraine, then you have a COVID. I mean, how many things can you predict? So in my own mind, that regulation and replying to markets through rule-based and through regulation, which is done through trialogue, is just not possible. It is not something that is possible. Liv is given a very good example. We have been saying this for a long time. We have this Orwellian term of invalidation, and we invalidate everything willy-nilly. Everything that goes in the MSR gets invalidated. But I mean, people have been doing things. So why do you invalidate? Why don't you think a little bit ahead of time and say, well, listen, part of it is because somebody's done something, and part of it is because we have an economic recession. So some of it doesn't belong in the scenario. Some of it is simply the result of something that people have done. Some of it may be legitimate to be taken out of the market. Some of it is not legitimate to take out of the market. So having said all this, since you asked us to be very short, Matthew, and I appreciate this because I moderate quite a few things like this, and I know how frustrating it can be when people go on and on and on. I have Fabian, I have an old friend of mine that now I think is probably writing books, Christian de Pertuis. And Christian and I had supported for a long time the theory that regulating or running a market on rule-based markets is just not going to happen. And the reason why you have a Fed and you have a committee and people actually looking at this and having two targets, one of them is financial regulation, but the other one is decarbonization, is that you do need an intimate interaction with the market, and you need somebody to take care of this and manage this market. If not, you will continue to put Band-Aid. If this is what we want to do, I can guarantee you, Matthew, that you have a job, because 3 years from now, we're going to have another crisis and we're going to have another decision. Thanks, I'll stop here.
Andre, thanks very much. And I hope you stick around to answer some questions, which I can see are coming in thick and fast from our audience today. Our final speaker is Robert Jeschke. Robert, Robert is heading the National Center for Emissions Management, or COBITSA as it's known for short, part of the Institute of the Environmental Protection, National Research Institute, and is which is supervised by the Ministry of Climate and Environment. Amongst others, serving as a government expert, for example, during the negotiations for the EU Climate and Energy Package in 2008, and during its implementation since 2009. Robert participates in various work groups, task forces, both at national and international level, dealing with issues of environmental and climate policy, the economy of climate change, and carbon markets, most relevantly. Robert, I hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and a very interesting discussion. I think most of the issues that are dealing with the current situation on the market and our obvious worries about the fundamentals and that encourage the price development are spotted. I especially admire the Leaf rate points on the MSR balance and the situation that we are still sucking up the allowances from the market, not having in mind what are the allowances coming from, or the structural reform, or the reduction that comes from the price development itself. But I would like to focus as well and draw your attention on some crucial thing coming from the MSR, from the ESMA report, because few days ago, ESMA published the final report on the market, on the ETS market, and I think it comes a couple of weeks to let's say find some conclusion coming from the ESMA reflections, because most of the people and most of the comments are sticking to the points that everything is fine on the market, and it's not. If you read carefully the report of ESMA, then you find some good points that ESMA is highlighting in their calculations. So the key message from the ESMA report, from analyzed data and the enormous data they take into consideration, is that the share of the investment funds on the markets is rather limited, like 5–10%. And about 50% of the total open positions are held by non-financial which means by ETS operator, or it's called commercial undertaking. So the firm companies that are buying from hedging means for the ETS operators, and which are also buy allowances from banks and investment firms which hold short positions. So this is the main point coming from for the report, that this is not a huge, let's say, part. But unfortunately, it seems that the data that are presented on the basis of the same market participant classification are the same as the classifications before. And the simple thing is that the ESMA, there are not enough information for ESMA or anybody else to draw the conclusion who are these commercial undertakings operate on behalf of whose they are operated. We noted earlier that the classification for entities used by the commitment of trades is inappropriate because we still don't know what purpose of allowances are purchased, who can give the guarantee that intermediates do not buy on their own accounts or the third country clients. And it's especially important that ESMA is at the same time has the difficult to assess that approximately 33% of the market share of derivatives positions are mainly by entities outside Europe. So this is USA, UK, Caymans, and Australia. So this is true problem because we don't have enough data. So the ESMA points out that we have to stronger look at the market development and the data itself. So this is a crucial point. So ESMA pointing out as well. So ESMA also report that growing number of assets flowing from ETF funds. So we are currently, and this is in ESMA report, you can look, 6 ETF entities on the market, and all outside Europe. And as an example, we find out a very crucial point that this is one ETF. It's called Spark Change Physical Carbon ETC in Australia, which is especially interesting because this ETF can buy physical allowances, that can be especially dangerous in the context of competition with ETS operators, because they are buying the same allowances that are physically, that are also for operators in the ETS. So this gives the let's say opportunity for, let's call it street, so individual investors to buy allowances on behalf, I mean, through this kind of ETF. And these are not even citizens of Europe. So these are the people that can be part of ETF and buy physically allowances from the European market. So this is extremely dangerous when we talk about the speculation on the market. And coming back to Michael's statement, which I totally agree, that the speculation is dangerous phenomenon that can lead to artificial high prices, but we have to be especially careful on let's say putting some rules on the ETS market, because we got the situation that these let's say high prices are also the prices on the market present the future fundamentals of this market, which can be discounted at today prices by investor, but not only by continuous raising the reduction target of the European Commission, which means that there are fewer and fewer allowances available in the ETS system, but also the functioning of the MSR reserve. And according to our KBIS analysis, we especially look at the proposal of MSR, of the European Commission proposal for MSR changes. And our analysis showed that design of this mechanism will be crucial for the future EU price development. For example, rising intake rate to 24% could, in extreme cases, on hedging development strategies of the companies, and as not only companies but also other financial players, can lead to extreme increase in EU prices in 2030, up to 2,000 euros per ton. So the prospect of such hedge prices in the future may encourage speculators even more. So do we really need such price spikes And I think we don't. We need the stable market to be predictable for the companies and not driven by the speculators or other instruments that are encourage price to develop instead of the level of the reduction which are agreed in political level. So price should reflect the marginal cost of reduction, but I have an impression that this is not the case today. Therefore, CO2 market should be protected against the excessive price increase. And from our opinion, the very good option on the market safeguard is the mechanism which is already in place, Article 29A. But of course, it's not working, and we developed several analyses showing that this is dead regulation at the moment. But this mechanism.
Robert,
yeah.
Thanks. I think you've raised some great points there, and I can see that we're coming to the point. Just looking at the clock, we have about 25 minutes left, so we will be able to get to a few of our questions. But I see three panelists with their hand up. Wanda, I'd like to come to you quickly before we go to take our first question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to quickly respond to what I heard. I cannot agree that the EU ETS was an effective tool which was driving green transition. In fact, it was never an effective and successful tool. And why is that? Because at the very beginning, like let's say in 2017, when the prices were very low, well, it was not an incentive to decarbonize. And suddenly, later on, the prices ramp up and again and again. And so the market became very unstable and unpredictable. And, what also confirmed, and basically with the numbers that I already gave you, in 2021, we spent 10% of the total investment into renewables for this decade, which gonna bring almost 7 gigawatts in renewables in Poland. We spend it for EU ETS. So basically the money that we could invest to develop further, to transform quicker and faster, well, we couldn't use. And I think that we should admit, even have bearing in mind that it's not easy to admit that something that we are justifying and defending for so long is not doing best, but EU ETS is not doing best. So yeah, we want to we do support the proposal of Mr. Jerzy Buzek to limit the role of financial institution on EU ETS. We can achieve it also in other ways, for example, by introducing general or individual limits for the financial institutions. So, for example, by setting percentage limit of the volume that financial players can buy individually. And we also think that MSR reform seems to be inevitable, as the TNAC is vulnerable to the position taken by non-compliance entities. So we think that the decision to release allowances from the reserve should be based not only on TNAC, but also on the price of allowances. I think according to impact assessment, the average price for EU ETS allowance for this decade was 50 euros. It's completely not in line with the market. It's not in line with the reality. So I know sometimes it's hard to admit that we were wrong, but basically most of the actors from European Union institution were wrong. And this is the time to admit it. And if European Union really wants a green transition, it should make it doable. With the current shape of EU ETS system, it's not doable. So the countries like Poland, with the PGE as the biggest energy company, with the current shape of EU ETS, we will not be able to transform. So we will drop the ball. And
Wanda,
yeah.
So the point that you make about sort of uncertainty and unpredictability is absolutely clear, and nobody can argue with that. I mean, it seems unanimous around the table today. But just to sort of ask a question, I mean, how does the amount that you're having to invest, or sorry, you're being forced to commit to the EU ETS, that money that is committed to the mechanism, some of it comes back in terms of in some of the funds that are available for you to, that you're eligible for to develop a decarbonized energy system. What's the balance? I mean, the unpredictability, I get it. Everybody understands that. But some of the money comes back. It's not as clear cut as I understood that.
But the problem is somewhere else, because we need to spend money for EU ETS now, and we have to wait that once we're able to get money, for example, from modernization fund.
Yep.
So we are struggling with access to the capital, and that's what I said. Maybe it was not clear. That's what I meant when I said that we are some kind supporting the financial institution, because we are creating the demand, because we are not buying from because we are forced to buy from the secondary market, because we don't have to pay in cash on the secondary market. So, and as you can see, and when you put it together with a significant ramp up of the prices, and such a huge amount of money that every year we have to spend, we need to some kind roll the cost. So this is the problem I would like to point out. So yeah, of course we will have an access as an energy company. We will have an access to financing from modernization fund and other sources, but that's going to be in the future, and that's going to take time. And we are struggling today.
Thanks, Wanda. I see. Thanks for answering that. I wanted to come to a question now. I can see some hands raised. I will come to you. I will come back to you, but I do want to get in our first question. So please hold your thoughts, panelists. I can see you're all burning to come in. The most popular question has come in from. Initially, I thought it was an anonymous caller, but he's now revealed himself and. It is Robert Pietzke. Robert, a lot of people have voted your question. So, Matti, can I ask you to allow Robert to speak? Robert, I'm waiting for you to connect. So this question, yeah, has been voted by 8 other attendees. Matti, have you been able to find Robert?
Great. Does it work?
Yes, Robert, welcome to Energy Post. Please ask your question to our panelists. If you could say who you represent, that would be great. And if there's a particular panelist that you think can answer your question best, then please let us know.
Well, thanks, Matthew. I'm Robert Pietzke from the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, as Michael Pahle. And my question was to the first 2 speakers, Andre and Jerzy, because it sounded a lot as if they said, let's stop all non-compliance actors from the market. And I was just wondering, without non-compliance actors, as Andre Marco made the point very clear, you don't have any hedging. You can't hedge if you don't have non-compliance traders, because otherwise you have to bear the full capital upfront. As just the person from PGE just said, it's already they find it difficult to pay this year's emissions. How will they manage the burden of paying upfront for the next 1 or 2 or 3 years? And I never heard of an industry company that wouldn't want to hedge. So how does that match off? Or how would the PGE person say, okay, if we don't have any compliance traders, we can't hedge anymore. We have to pay upfront now. That would make things even more complicated.
Thank you very much, Robert. Jerzy or Andre, would either of you like to answer Robert? He was directing that question at you. Let me see. Andre,
Jerzy, do you want to interact, or shall I?
It seems a fairly technical question, but Andre, if you want to answer first, that would be great. Thank you.
It is a very technical question, and I am not competent fully to give a full appropriate technical answer. My logic is clear. If we have too many stakeholders in the system, also those who physically do not need for their energy, means that they simply reduce the availability for those who need it. And the way how to put it in the full system is especially on the experts on European Commission to come forward with a sustainable proposal. Myself as an MEP with few people in the office, I will not be able to do it. It's a legitimate question, but I believe there is a solution which can secure both finance, cash flow, how do you call it, and also possibility to have enough allowances in the system for those who really must or have to use it. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. Andre Gnotek. Andre Marcu, you've got your hand up. Perhaps you could also comment on that question. I know you
when you say Andre, I never know which one you're referring to. Everyone jumped up, and so Andre, there we go. Look, it's not a technical issue. It's not a technical matter, the fundamental matter. I mean, if you have nobody if you don't have anybody on the other side to hedge with, I mean, there is no hedging. I mean, somebody's going to have to be your counterpart. Either there's going to be somebody else in the compliance business. So I think the idea of eliminating them completely, I don't think that's going to fly. I think that what we need to understand is this call for increasing transparency, but and a number of other things that have been mentioned, the MSR changes, the Article 29, the transparency. These are a suite of things that are going to need to be put in place. But there's two things that I wanted to add very quickly. One of them is that you need to look at the reason for why you have this. You have a combination of a constant regulatory changes. There may be good reasons for that, but they're nevertheless constant. And the second one is the expectation of changes of ambition. This, we've gone from 40 to 55, and I can bet you something good, Matthew, because I'll see you by 2028, I hope sometime, that we're going to have another ambition by the second stock take in the UNFCCC. That will drive people to speculate even more on regulatory developments. And this is going to get not better. This is going to get worse. Why? Because the market is going to become increasingly liquid. The more the curve goes down and less liquidity on the market, these small movements, actors will have the ability to impact more. So this is something that is really urgent. It's something that we need to think about how we deal with. Again, I'm not sure that kind of killing all the banks from the market is going to be a good idea, but something is going to have to happen because this is not going to get any better. The second point, I think Wanda made an excellent point. There is a time lag between that I'm going to get some money to decarbonize, and this is going to take an investment cycle. I mean, I can't build a plant tomorrow. It's going to take time. And the cost of the EUA that I have to bear today. So this time lag, this time discontinuity with the good intention of giving money to decarbonize, but the fact that I have to deal with this today. And the more the price goes today, the less money is going to have into the longer term.
Thank you,
I'll stop here because you have a long line.
Yeah, and you've underlined that point that Wanda made earlier too. Liv, you've had your hand up for a while. Is it an answer to a question, or you want to come back on what you've heard from one of the other speakers? And please now, as you can see, we've got 11 minutes, so we're going to be trying to, I'm just going to try and come around to everybody at least once more time. Liv, over to you.
Yes, I will be short. It's a question to you, Fabian. Because what we have heard now, and we've seen this volatility in this market, we know this regulation, if you're going to do something about this, it's politicians. How much are they able to do? Because this process is going so fast, and it is quite terrifying with regards to important decisions. So with regards to the MSR and Article 29, that is very important. And if we are not able to solve them, have you looked at the Western Climate Initiative and compare, because they have a sort of price corridor and disadvantages with this clearness, predictability that industries have there? Could you comment on that, Fabian? Thank you.
Fabian, yes, we haven't heard. Can I ask you to answer that question, and also a question which is coming from Saleh Obadi? Sorry, Saleh, I'm not going to come to you live just for interest of time. His question is, what is the share of speculation impact on the present high energy prices in the EU? I think it's really, this question's come up a lot. It's like, what's the balance between financial actors and people with skin in the game?
So let me take these in turn. I mean, first, let me comment on the issue of banning financial players. I think essentially what we are all saying here is that there are costs and benefits, right, in allowing to some extent financial players. And I'd like to say two things. It seems to me it's not black or white. It's not either they are in or out. I think the clever thing to ask is, should there be a regulation or a taxation, which we see, by the way, in some other markets, to limit the role they can play? So that's my first remark. My second remark is, on top of that, one may think that the cost benefits of having financial players may evolve over time. So I think that that's a very important point that's been made before by Andre. We need to think also in a dynamic perspective, and we need to think that there may be periods in the ETS when you have particular uncertainty, periods of crisis like now, where actually, the benefits of speculation in terms of price discovery are not that great, because nobody knows what are the fundamentals in a period of deep uncertainty on where the climate agenda is going and the economy, whilst you still have the cost. So I would also like to put forward the idea that you could have temporary limits to some of the positions, for instance. So this could be something to consider in certain periods. So these are two ideas that we developed in our reports. I've seen that there is a question as we have the publication of the report. The full report will be published on our website within a week or two. And then let me take the question of lead. So the fundamental question of price stabilization and how this is done in other markets. So we have indeed done a benchmark. We have compared with both the US but also Asian carbon market. And I think all carbon markets to some extent have a price stabilization scheme. We have done a study actually 2 years ago to try and quantify the benefits of having a price corridor. And one thing we found is that having a price corridor is providing a long-term, I would say, perspective to investors. It's also an insurance against very high prices, and that has a positive effect on the cost of capital, simply because you can invest in the long term, having a more predictable trajectory. So I'm happy also to share the link to that older study if that's of interest.
Thank you, Fabian. Thank you very much. Liv, I hope that answered your question. Very quickly, Michael and Robert, so you both have your hands up, 30 seconds, and then we will need to go to closing remarks. First to you, Michael.
Yes, thanks. And I wanted to say I did not set up Robert Pizler's question, so that was by pure coincidence. I want to amplify the point that Andre with an A made. So we are in a situation of regulatory changes / uncertainty, and in a way, one could say we got what we asked for. I mean, we made a fundamental change in the ambition of the ETS, and we would expect to change. The only surprising element is here the pace of the change. And so I think the market responded to the stronger push and the stronger political momentum that we are currently undergoing. And the very important question is if, as Andre asserted, will this regulatory change ever come to an end? Or will we be in a persistent period, or will we be in a constant regulatory change throughout the next decade? And if so, then we have it would be wrong to address the symptoms. We must address the root cause and find a sort of governance, or not a sort of, need to identify and develop a mode of governance that brings the stability to the market and not blaming the market itself. I think this is really crucial.
Thank you very much, Michael. And Robert, over to you.
Yes, just to also summarize, I think we should also divide two things. One is the role of ETS and the market, the price of the market price development and how it's behaved and how to, let's say, address the speculators issue and the financial institutions role of the market, which is one thing. And the second thing that we should have a proper stabilization or address the higher spikes on the prices internally in the regulation. So in this respect, we should have a proper legislation, and with Article 29A, or having in mind that all the issues that are all the proposals in the Fit for 55 package, I mean MSR, CBAM, another ETS for ETS2 for transport and buildings, all these issues, all this parts of Fit for 55 package will drive the price up, which is crucial point. That's why we have to have safety market and the safety measures in the legislation.
Robert, thank you very much. Well, we are almost at the end. I really appreciate, Wanda, that you've stayed with us. I know that you have a busy schedule this morning. And I know that also our MEPs have left because there's an ITRA meeting. So maybe they've taken some of your thoughts with them into that meeting, and it's already having an effect. So perhaps I could just very, very quickly to our speakers that are still here, ask your very, very last thoughts, last words on the EU ETS reform. I'd like to start with you, Wanda, because I know, just in case I know you need to go. So Wanda, your thoughts.
Well, as I already said, I think it's necessary to rethink the current EU ETS shape and to admit that it was not working good. It was not a tool that have been driving energy transition throughout last years, but it was the tool for monetizing and to bring benefits for financial institutions. And I believe that right now it's clear for everyone. As I said, we can see from ISMA reports that there are financial institutions from Cayman Islands that are holding allowances. So that only confirms what I said. So this is the high time for all of us to admit it and to reshape EU ETS, because as we all want green transition in the whole Europe.
Wanda Buck from PGE, thank you very much. Then Andre Marcu.
Very quick, thank you. 3 quick points. First point, Michael Pollitt words, I've worded in a different way. Governance is going to be critical. You want temporary limits, who's going to do that? Temporary limits require a very rapid reaction. The current governance is just will continue to be a problem. Second thing is, this is going to become a bigger problem as time goes by, and as the market liquidity goes down, you will need deeper markets. Linking to others is going to become increasingly important. Third thing is, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. There are examples of regulation, like in California, where when you have situations of price fluctuations, there are allowances being released only to compliance buyers, but not to everybody. So you can be selective in how you do that, as opposed to kind of going with it and whack everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. Michael.
Yeah, I basically want to amplify the point I already made. So I think we need to view this as a process, and I think scandalizing different developments and elements is not really helping us. And we all have the same aim. We want to have a stable system. And I think we should take this as a starting point and be clear about how we bring stability and taking the challenges of a changing regulatory environment into account. But we would not like to have a quick solution that's one shot off that we need to revise maybe in just 1 or 2 years from now.
Thank you, Michael. Liv Rata from Norsk Hydro.
Yes, I think we should look a little bit what's happening in California, because we need to make those clubs. eventually. We need to be equally ambitious. And I think we should learn from their system, and they should learn from ours. But because if we are not able to stabilize the market and be more predictable, as Andrea said, this could really escalate when the allowances are running out. So I think we will benefit from looking into others and see what we can achieve by being more aligned with our systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liv. I think Fabien, just final word from you. Thank you for presenting the summary earlier.
Yeah, very quickly, I think we should not forget that the ETS price signal is fundamental for the decarbonization in the economy. But that means it needs to be socially and politically acceptable. And that means we need to think carefully about not just the functioning of the market, but the governance and the level of the price and the kind of volatility that is something that is sustainable. So I think what we have today is decision time. You know, we knew about these issues for a long time, but what is new is that the level and the volatility that we have means we need an urgent decision on this issue now.
Fabien, thank you very much. And Robert, I think it's just you who hasn't made a final comment. So your last words, please.
Yeah, I thought I did, but of course I agree with Michael, and all of this was stated. I mean, we need stabilized market. We need the price development. That's of course drive the reduction in ETS. But we have to look, and this is in the ESMA report. We have to look carefully on the data, and then this market needs to be more reflection on the market should be focused. And I think ESMA got enough competence, and at least European Commission should give ESMA more competence to look at the data which are lacking still. And this is first thing, to monitoring the market behavior, and the second thing, to proper stabilizing in tools that was mentioned, or looking on the not only on the California issue, but also we can look closer to British ETS, which are got similar, let's say, like Article 28 instruments, which are more proper scale than European ones. So we got proper tools. We have to get it together and implement.
Thank you. Thanks, Robert. Yes, sorry, perhaps I'd already come to you, but I just had to see your logo again. Hello, we are cake. Excellent. So I would now that we really are at an end. We've already overrun. Thank you so much to all of Energy Post readers that have joined us today. It was a really excellent turnout, and I'm not surprised on such a big topic. As I said, MEP Jerzy Buzek and Andrzej Knotek of EPP and Renew, respectively, have had to leave to go off to the ITRA meeting. I thank them for co-hosting today. But just a quick thank you to all of our speakers. To Liv Raata from Norsk Hydro, thank you very much. You can unmute and say thank you and goodbye. And also to...
Thank you.
Yeah, to Fabien Roch, Compass Lexicon, FTI Compass Lexicon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks to Andre. Thank you very much, Michael Pahl from Potsdam Institute.
Many thanks. Bye.
And to Robert.
Thank you. Bye.
And finally, Wanda, thanks very much for staying with us right till the end. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah, an excellent discussion, and we will be back in April with some further discussions, this time with ECECP, the European China Energy Cooperation Partnership, where we will be looking at innovation of the strengths of our European companies and their innovative techniques for the transition. So that is on the 26th of April. You can put in your diaries, and a couple of thank yous for the team behind the scenes, to Arison Arulaya, as always, our editor, who's been busy tweeting some of the key comments that have been that have come out of today's roundtable. To Matty, who's been doing the technical support today, thank you to him, first time, well done. And I always have to do a thank you to Sara Stefanini. She's not online today, but she's the woman who will be writing the report today, which we will publish on Tuesday. So thanks to Sara Stefanini for the excellent report summaries that she does for all of our events. But thanks mostly to all of our readers for joining us today. This is Matthew James from Energy Post, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye.